There we go.
Okay, we should be good.
Rosemary, are you on? Let's get Rosemary part of this. Nick, part of this.
I'm here now. Can you hear me?
Yep. We got to see you.
I'm not sure why it's not showing me on that yet. Hold on.
I
have,
there
there
you go. You're good. So you may want to tell Nick. Who else is your three witnesses? There's Nick.
Nick, Fred Miola, and Doug Asrill.
I did not see Doug. Doug is not there yet.
Okay, let me email him again. He said he was trying to re-log in.
Oh, there's Doug. Doug's there. Okay, good. Okay. Jen, is it fine? Given in accordance with the Sunshine Laws, notice was published on May 23rd, 2020 in the Star Ledger, which is the official newspaper of the Township of Springfield for 2020, and also posted in the Annex building on May 25th, 2020 as well. So everyone knows this is a virtual meeting. Anyone that has any questions for the board, we will take all questions at the end of the applications and at the end of all matters, as well as if you have any questions on how to log in and ask questions, there is a self-explanatory information on the Township of Springfield's website that details how to ask questions from the board. Let's do a salute to the flag. Everyone rise. I hope this works. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States
and to the republic
for which it stands, one
nation,
under God, indivisible, liberty and
justice for all. Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Okay, Ben, can we please have a roll call?
Committeeman Rich Huber, absent. Mr. David Barnett.
Here.
Mr. Andrew Schwartz.
Present.
Mr. Jerry Fernandez is absent. Ms. Silviene Grzybo.
Present.
Mr. Aaron Loffer.
Here.
Mr. Brian Brendell.
Hello.
Ms. Marissa Ruggiero.
Hello.
Mr. Scott Wishna.
Present.
Vice Chairwoman Sharon Kessel.
Here.
And Chairman Jeff Tiger.
I'm here, yes. Okay. Perfect, thank you. Before we get started, Andrew, you want to tell everyone how many days that we haven't had sports? That's always our thing now.
Too many.
Too many, okay, that's good too. Okay, so the first order before the business is, and we're gonna have the meeting minutes?
No, not this time, next time.
We're gonna do them next time. Okay, so we have a resolution, which we had Evergreen Diagnostic LL Balfour, application 3-2020S. If everyone remembers, this was for a building for preliminary and final site plan with bulk variances for the new building. Everyone have a chance to review it. It was on the Google Drive. I reviewed it. Look, I didn't have any questions. Any members of the board with any questions? Seeing none, I think Mr. Schwartz was going to entertain a motion.
No, he recused.
Oh, he did. That's right. He did. So, Mr. Barnett?
I'll make a motion.
Go ahead. Someone make the motion. Help me here.
I'd like to make a motion to approve application 11 I'm sorry, no, wrong application number. Application 3-2020-S Evergreen Diagnostics, 35 Stern Avenue, block 3101, lot 9 for preliminary and final site plan and bulk variance.
Second.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a roll call.
Ms. Grzybo.
Yes.
Vice Chair Kessel.
Yes.
Mr. Barnett.
David?
I'll come back to him. Mr. Loffer.
Yes.
Mr. Brendell.
Yes.
Ms. Ruggiero.
Yes.
Mr. Wishna.
I don't recall that I voted on that. I don't think I did. So I'll abstain.
Okay.
I can't remember if I did.
Mr. Barnett.
Okay, he's just not voting. That's okay.
Okay.
It's okay. Yes,
He's got to unmute.
Chairman Tiger.
Yes.
And just for the record, that motion was to adopt the memorializing resolution. The actual action was taken at the hearing. It's just a memorialization. Just note that in the minutes, Jen, okay?
Okay.
Yep, and we will, Jen, I will sign that and put it up in township tomorrow.
Okay.
Perfect. The next application is application 11-2019S. This is Mario Ferreira, 15 Clinton Avenue. This is block 802, lot 10, for minor subdivision block, bulk variances, 2 lots. Mr. Keynes, can you do the little preamble on this, please?
Absolutely. This application was before the board. The board voted to not approve it. And council approached us as possibly coming in with an amended application in lieu of going to litigation and having to litigate it and possibly getting a court to remand it. There's a case called Whispering Woods at Bam Hollow versus Township of Middletown. The site, for those of you who like it, is 220 NJ Super 161. It was decided in 1987. What Whispering Woods allows boards to do in order to save municipal funds and other funds is to enter into possible settlement discussions with an applicant. We did not do a full Whispering Woods review on this one because we actually didn't have a quorum of the board. We treated it as a subcommittee, which is absolutely allowed under the law. And nobody, the subcommittee certainly made comments. And what we have done now is there's a hearing pending tonight. It was, I assume, and Jen will correct me if I'm wrong, it will be a hearing on the pending application. The board can take some judicial notice of some of the facts to expedite it. But the trick is that on this application that was provided, it is substantially different, so it doesn't constitute res judicata, so the board has complete jurisdiction as far as I'm concerned. This is a good progressive way of trying to deal with issues that weren't quite ironed out at the time of the hearing. The public has every right to participate in the hearing as a matter of right and as a matter of law, just as if it is a regular hearing. And the board members, the board has not made any decision on it. They will take in the testimony. As I said, it was before a subcommittee of the board. And if anybody has any questions, I think that's enough from me.
Nope, I think so, Glenn. Thank you. I think it outlines exactly with what's going to come before the board tonight and the reason why for the public that this application is back before us. Mrs. Stone, Rosemary, are you on?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, yes.
So I'm going to turn it over to you to present your case for the public's edification and for yours. I know that you had mentioned that you had 3 witnesses. We're going to have you put up witness 1. I'm going to go to my professionals, open up to the board for questions in a particular order, ask any questions, then we'll go to your next witness and so forth and so forth. Then at the end, the public will be able to address all your witnesses. So none of your witnesses should go anywhere. They should all stay on this meeting, and we will give the public 3 minutes, each person, to ask questions of the board, questions of the applications, comments, whatever it might be, and that will be the way it'll be handled.
Understood.
So,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Can I ask a question before council begins? So the application that was heard for the same property previously, are we to disregard any of the testimony that took place and are treating this like a full brand new application?
Well, it is a new application, but you certainly can take judicial notice of things. But the fact is, there is a subdivision, and that you already know about, and Rosemary will provide testimony on it. The fact is they've changed some items on it, and she's going to reflect on what that is, and she'll let you know as she's going on.
Okay.
I just want to check, Jen, this has been deemed complete and notice is perfected. Is that correct? We have jurisdiction to hear it? I think Jen said yes.
Yes.
Okay,
Sorry, yes.
thank you. Okay, Mr. Chairman, I'm done.
All right, so good. So Rosemary, what I'd like you to do is call your first witness. Glenn will swear them in, and then the board will qualify the witness, as an expert or not.
Okay, absolutely, Mr. Chairman. Just so the record is clear, I am attorney Rosemary Stone Dougherty, the attorney for the applicant, Mario Ferreira, in regards to a minor subdivision application with variances for the property at 15 Clinton Avenue, also known as Block 802, Lot 10, which is currently located in the S-60 residential zone within the township of Springfield. At this point, I'd like to call my first witness, which is Mr. Frederick C. Miola, as a licensed engineer. Mr. Miola?
Yes,
Fred, would you please raise your right hand? Do you swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth in proceedings before the board tonight, so help you God?
yes, I do.
Fred, your appearing and testifying is what?
I'm a professional engineer and professional land surveyor.
And you were previously qualified before this board, and the board accepted your qualifications in both those categories. Is that correct, Fred?
Yes,
And your licenses are still valid since the last time you came before the board, aren't they, Fred?
yes. Matter of fact, I just paid for the next 2 years.
Thank you for sharing. Does anybody have any questions as to Mr. Miola's qualifications?
No, I think we're good with it. He's been before us. And since he paid, he's entitled now. So let's go. Go ahead, Ms. Stone.
Okay, Mr. Miola, you prepared for the application that's before the board tonight a set of minor subdivision plans consisting of 2 pages dated May 26, 2020, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Can you walk- Mr. Miola, can you just briefly describe to the board the property in question that's the subject of this subdivision as it exists today?
Yes, the property is the first residential lot in from Mountain Avenue. It's abutting the dentist's office on the one side, and on the rear, it's abutting the Board of Education property, the school. And the property is 12,320.7 square feet today, with a fairly decent-sized home, with a very large garage and a large paved area that encompasses the home. It's like a horseshoe.
Okay. And what is the applicant proposing to do under the plans that you've prepared?
The applicant is proposing to take down all the improvements on the property, subdivide it into 2 residential lots, more in keeping with the neighborhood. The lots have a lot area of 6,050 square feet for lot 10.02 and 6,272 square feet for lot 10.01.
Okay. And besides the lot area, the zone that they're in now currently requires how much for lot area?
It requires 7,500 square feet. And it should point out too that the zone requires 60-foot lot width. Lot 10.02 is 43.88 foot, 43.89 of lot width. And lot 10.01 has 56.11 feet of lot width.
Okay. And are those the only variances required in connection with the subdivision application that you have prepared?
Yes, the homes are designed to comply with all of the setback requirements, all of the improvements. Should point out the existing property, as we're looking at it today, has 46.1%. The improvements on the property today are 46.1% of lot coverage. The ordinance requires 36%. The new homes both will comply with that 36%. One, I believe, is 35.6 and the other one is 35.4. And part of the little additional percentage was to push the homes back to allow 2 cars on the driveway. So if you'll notice, the setback for the homes exceeds the front yard requirement.
Okay, so when you went back to the drawing board to redesign the minor subdivision, can you point out to the board, besides what you just said, pushing the homes back to allow for 2 car lengths for each of the driveways? What are some of the other highlights you can point to the board?
What we did was reoriented the home, especially on 10.01, because the neighbor adjacent to us was concerned with the driveway being so close to his property. We flipped the garage on that home over. So now the driveway is much further away from his property line.
Can I interrupt? Can we see, why don't we put up some exhibits so the public can kind of see with what you're reviewing? Is that okay?
Sure.
Absolutely.
What exhibit is good for Joe to put up?
Probably page 1 of 2.
I've got multiple exhibit numbers here. Is it exhibit 1, exhibit 2, exhibit 3?
No, wouldn't it be the exhibits? This would be the engineering plans, page 1.
Let's see if this is what you guys are looking for.
Thanks, Joe.
Yep. Is that it?
Next
Yes,
page.
that's it.
That's
Perfect.
it.
If you look at the third box over, that shows the proposed homes. You can see that the driveway for the most southeasterly property, the driveway is on the northwest side of that property, allowing for much more of a lawn adjacent to the residential home next to us. Okay. Also, what was done was there's an old chain link fence with a gate on it behind us. Mr. Disco was kind enough to get me in contact with the Board of Education, and we're going to be replacing that dilapidated fence in the back with a board-on-board fence with no gate. There's no reason for the gate. Apparently, the gate was there because at one time this property was used by the Board of Education for offices.
Okay, and then you have an agreement with the Board of Ed on that?
Yeah, they've been okay with it. They seem to be happy with it.
Okay,
I don't have anything in writing yet, but in the conversations, this is acceptable to them.
fine.
Okay, so Mr. Miola, in your testimony, do I understand correctly that the two homes as they are designed now will actually provide for better conformance to the lot coverage requirements of the zone?
Yes, the homes as provided will meet the lot coverage. It'll meet all of the setback requirements. It'll provide for RSIS as far as the number of cars for a 4-bedroom home. Each home will have room for 3 cars, 1 in the garage and 2 on the driveway.
Okay, now one of the other concerns was whether or not there would be the availability for any on-site, on the street parking. Was that remedied as well?
Yes, with flipping the driveway on lot 10.01, and I show the dimensions somewhere on this plan. There's enough room for a car to park and not block our driveway or the neighbor's driveway. And the same holds true on the northwest lot 10.02. There's enough room from the driveway to the driveway for the dentist's office to provide parking. So there's 2 additional parking spots that were achieved with the reconfiguration of the driveway and eliminating that giant horseshoe driveway that was on the original property.
Excellent. So that's actually an improvement over what's there today, correct?
Correct.
And then, Mr. Miola, you had an opportunity to review Mr. Disco's updated June 1 engineering memo, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Can you please address his question on of whether or not there'll be any chimney encroachments?
Yeah, there's no chimney encroachments. I've talked to the architect about it, and the fireplaces will be pulled into the home a little bit so that they're not violating the setback at that point.
Okay, and then what about his comment number 5 about wanting confirmation that the building coverage values also include the roof projections?
I'd have to verify with the architect what the size of the overhangs are. There is a little room in there, so if it's a normal 6-inch overhang, you're fine. And I don't know whether the sides are going to have overhangs or rake boards.
So you'll comply with the
But we
ordinance?
will comply. One way or the other, we'll make it comply.
Okay, that's good enough.
Okay, and then Fred, item number 10, were you able to confirm with the applicant that at this point in time, there's no generators proposed for the homes? That was Mr.
Yes.
Disco's item number 10.
Yes, that is correct. At this point in time, there's no anticipation of putting in generators for these homes.
Okay. And then Fred, if this isn't you, we can have our planner address this in a little more detail, but item number 15, can you just provide some testimony as to Mr. Disco's comment regarding the ordinance suggesting that lot lines should be at right angles to the street lines where practical?
Yeah, and that last part is the important part where practical. With this lot having a skewed alignment because the one side is parallel to the homes on Mountain Avenue and the other side is perpendicular to Clinton Avenue, you start with a skewed lot line. So to try to accomplish right angle lots is impossible to try to get lot configurations and shapes of lots that work. You can see from the plan that it was specifically designed to accommodate homes allowed to meet all the requirements and meet all the setback requirements. But in doing so, you can't come out perpendicular to the street with each of one of the lot lines, the one on the northwest side is already there. You know, I can't take that and change it. It's already non-perpendicular. The one in the middle was designed specifically to get the areas and to allow an ample room for the homes.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Miola. Now, in preparation for tonight's meeting, you also prepared 3 exhibits on behalf of the applicant, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Your Exhibit 1, which is also titled as AA181209, Joe, when you're looking in the Google Drive, I believe Jennifer updated it to say Exhibit 1. There you go. Perfect. Thank you, Joe.
Yeah.
Fred, can you walk through the purpose of this exhibit and what it's showing?
Yeah, at the prior meeting, there was a lot of questions about what the height of the other houses are. So I had the crew go out and locate the first floor of the house, the peak of the roof, and the average grade in the front of the house. And we're showing you what the heights of every home is on the street, on both sides of the street. And then you can see it's a mix of anywhere from a ranch home up to, there's 2-story homes, quite a few of them. And the average height, the highest house is like 27.2, 26.5. You got a lot of 21s, 22s, 23s, 24s, and then the ranch houses, for obvious reasons, are down in the ballpark of 16 to 17 feet. And I believe there's 2 or 3 ranches out there.
So can you confirm what is the building heights that the applicant is now showing for a proposed lot 1001 and 1002?
Yes, the applicant is showing
While he's looking that up, let me know if there's anything you guys need me to zoom in on the exhibits.
the building height is, one home is 27.7, that's lot 10.01, and 10.02, just because of the grading, is 27.8.
That's okay.
Thank you, Fred. So in summary, your next exhibit number 2, are those just further color pictures of some of the surrounding homes where it corresponds with your exhibit 1 as far as the building heights and the building
Yes.
styles?
Yes, those are the pictures we took of the front of every single home on the street, and they're labeled down at the bottom what the address is and the height is.
Okay, just as an additional visual aid for your exhibit 1 exhibit, correct, Fred?
Yes.
Okay, and just exhibit 3 is just another photo array of the existing structure that's on the site today, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Shows the home and it shows the garage and the amount of pavement that's around it.
Let me
Okay.
just interrupt for a second, and we're gonna mark, we have to mark these. You've prepared all these exhibits, right, Fred?
Yes, I did.
And you've done nothing to enhance any of these exhibits.
No.
All right, I'd rather not interrupt you on your testimony, so as long as that's your testimony for all of them, Rosemary, let's just identify them, and we'll just mark them as A1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, as they already apparently are, but it doesn't appear that way on our screen, that's all. So I'm just trying to keep the record a little clear. That's all.
Okay, so Glenn, just so I'm clear though, we're not marking the plans as exhibits, right? Because those were the
No.
plans.
These,
So we're just
Which is
doing exhibit
anything
A.
new.
Exhibit A1 is the adjacent building exhibit that Fred Miola prepared. And then exhibit A2 is the photographs that correspond with that exhibit showing the building heights. And then
Exactly.
exhibit 3 is the existing structure or what's on the site today.
Exactly.
Okay,
Perfect.
perfect.
Anything further, Rosemary, from your?
So Fred, I just want to be clear. So the substantial improvements that were made over the previous application are, if I understood your testimony correct, Mr. Miola, is the new homes are going to comply now with the ordinance as far as lot coverage, correct?
Correct.
You modified the driveways now to meet RSIS standards, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
You said you flipped the driveway further away from the adjacent neighbor as was expressed at the last hearing, correct?
Yes.
You added street trees to the plan as well, correct?
Yes.
You are correcting the gate condition along the Board of Ed property, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And
Let me interrupt. It's going to be a new fence along the perimeter of the property without a gate.
Yes.
correct.
And I guess we'll leave it up to our board engineer to come up with the right appropriate fence with you and the Board of Ed.
Yes.
Okay.
And most importantly, you've also substantially reduced the height of the buildings as well, correct?
Yes, we have. And there's two other things if you want me to highlight them, Rosemary. The total impervious coverage, if you heard at the beginning, was 46.1%. By us bringing the percentage of coverage down to 36%, that's reducing the amount of runoff from the site. So there's a reduction in the drainage because of the new homes, because it's less impervious coverage. And the other thing is that Mr. Disco asked that we put in curbing on the driveway to control the water and get it out to the street. And the plans do show that the two driveways will have granite block curb.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Miola. Thank you. That's all, Mr. Chairman.
Perfect. Okay, so I'm going to open up Mr. Disco. If you can give the board any color or any questions that you have for Mr. Miola.
Well, I did a review last week. It was updated on Monday. Mr. Miola discussed or offered testimony on anything that I requested. So there's no engineering issue here. I mean, drainage is improved because lot coverage is reduced. There's no mitigation required. Parking has been satisfied per RSIS. It's an amendment to this application as opposed to the first one. And the police have commented on traffic and parking, so they have no issue. So there's no engineering issue on this. This strictly becomes a more of a planning and zoning issue.
Perfect. For the board's record, I know that our business administrator did speak to Captain Rachel, and there's an email that's public that shows that they did some review, and then they did not have any issue if anyone has any questions. If there's nothing further, Mr. Hughes, do you have anything for this witness, or are you going to reserve for planning testimony?
I'll reserve it for planning testimony. Nothing on the subdivision. I do think the board needs to hear some planning testimony in support of the lot area and lot width variances.
Perfect. Okay. I'm going to open it up to the board. First, Mr. Andrew Schwartz. Okay, you're good. I see you saying it's fine, so no questions. Ms. Ruggiero?
Nothing for me, thanks.
Okay, perfect. Mr. Wishna?
No questions, thanks.
Ms. Kessel?
Nothing for me.
Perfect. Mr. David Barnett?
No questions, but as you know, I like talking. I do appreciate and thank the applicant for putting in the work and making such changes to the site. I think it is a large improvement versus the first go around. So we do appreciate the extra work. Thank you.
Perfect. Mr. Brendell?
Nothing for me.
Perfect. Mr. Loeffler?
No, I'm good.
I'm good, and I'm the last person. I have no questions. Just to again reiterate to the public.
I have no questions either.
Oh, Sil, I'm so sorry. I missed you. I'm
okay.
sorry.
I'm glad the applicant made the changes, though. Appreciate that they took our feed.
Perfect. I announced. Okay, Sil's on. That's good. Thank you. Okay, and then for any members of the public, we're going to have all the questions of all the witnesses at the end. So just sit tight. Your questions and concerns will be heard. You'll have every opportunity to ask questions of all the witnesses and address the board. So with that, Rosemary, I think we're good. If you can please bring your second witness across.
Absolutely, Mr. Chairman. At this time, we'd like to call our architect, Mr. Douglas Azrell.
Yeah, hi. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Douglas.
Okay, all right. 'Cause my image is frozen for the moment. Okay.
All right, Douglas?
Yes.
Your first name is Douglas. Spell your last name, please, Doug.
Asral, Asral.
Doug, raise your right hand, please. Do you swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth, the proceedings before the board tonight? So help you God? Doug, you're a licensed professional architect in the state of New Jersey?
Yes, I am.
By whom are you employed?
I'm self-employed. The office, the firm name is Asral Architect LLC.
And what kind of work do you do? Don't say architecture. We get that part.
Okay. Primarily residential. I would say about 2/3 of my work is residential and small commercial.
Okay. What licenses do you hold, Doug?
I hold just in the state of New Jersey. I graduated from the New Jersey Institute of Technology with a Bachelor of Architecture, and obtained my license in September of 2000.
Doug,
I've also appeared before this board on previous occasions.
And you've been accepted as a licensed professional architect in the state of New Jersey, Doug?
Yes, I have. Yes, I am, and I'm current.
And you're current. I have no further questions, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, and I think the board, not seeing anyone with any dissent, has any concerns with his licenses. He was before us before. The only question, Doug, you're frozen in time. It's warm out, but you're frozen here. So
yeah.
And I don't know if that'll be a problem with you, with the exhibits, but let's see how we go. So Rosemary Stone, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Doug, you prepared for the board tonight a set of architectural plans dated May 27th, 2020, correct?
Yes. Should I share it on the screen?
Yes, please.
Okay.
All right. That's what we want to see.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Great.
Okay, so Doug, what we're looking at right now is page Z-3, which is the color elevations page of your exhibit, correct?
That's correct.
I say plans, excuse me, Glenn, plans. So starting with what we're looking at now.
Ro, hold on 1 second. Was this on file 10 days prior, or is this an exhibit for tonight, kiddo?
I'm gonna interrupt. It's an exhibit for tonight because
I wanted, yeah, that's why I wanted them to mark it, because it seems to me that it's a little bit different than what we saw a week ago. So, all right, so we're gonna mark this as you want this marked as A3, Rosemary?
It would be A4, Glenn.
Like I said, A4. Okay, thank you. Sorry.
No problem.
Okay, go ahead.
So, Doug, let's start with, why don't you start with lot 1001?
Okay.
And walk us through the elevation of the house and the materials and so forth, and then go into the floor plan, and then we'll switch over to lot 1002. Okay?
Sure. Okay. All right. So here we are, lot 1001. It's the property toward the right when looking at it straight on from the street. And adhering to the ordinance with regard to structures not being substantially similar to each other, starting with item number 1, the appearance and shape of the roof lines. For this particular lot, we went with a gabled front, and the siding materials are fiber cement clapboard siding, which simulates traditional wood siding. And moving on to the appearance and arrangement of windows and other apertures. The windows in this case are individual double hung units with classical colonial grills and crown molding trim at the window heads. The gables are accentuated with board and batten siding and crown molding. The front porch has classical Greek-style columns with a gabled portico, and the foundation to distinguish itself is of a standard brick, yeah, like a terracotta standard brick, foundation. And so so that's the theme we're going with the with lot 10.01.
Okay, so Doug, before we leave 10.01,
Mhm.
right now, representative, in the elevation that you're showing, I
Mhm.
believe you're showing like an evening blue color, correct?
Right, I'm taking this straight from the James Hardy catalog. It's the evening blue is the name they gave this particular shade, and it happens to be a trending color as of late. So it will be different than other homes in the area.
Okay. And then also, just to be clear though, you heard Mr. Miola testify that if you need to bring the fireplace in so there's no encroachment on the chimney, you will be able to satisfy and comply with that requirement, correct?
We certainly can.
Okay, and can you tell me how much of a roof overhang there is so that we can confirm we will comply as Mr. Miola testified?
Right. What's shown right now is a 1 foot overhang. It's typically what I do, with most homes with this type of roof pitch. But those overhangs can be brought in to comply with any restriction.
Okay, and then how tall is this height? What is the height of this house?
Yeah, this house just happens to be 27.7 feet, just the way the geometry worked out. And so it's 25.7 feet above the finished floor, or 27.7 feet above the grade.
Okay, thank you. And then just briefly highlight how large is this house, square footage and bedroom count?
Oh, okay. I'll just zoom out for a second here and go to the floor plans. The second floor is 1,448 square feet. And the first floor is 1,499 square feet. I'm sorry. It's 1,448 as well. So I'm sorry. So with that is total of 2,896 square feet total.
Okay.
Rosemary, these are on file, right? This isn't a new exhibit at all, is it?
Correct, it is not. Those have been on
Okay.
file.
Thank you.
Okay, so can you just describe a little bit the flow or function of the house as designed?
Right. Okay. So looking at the first floor.
I'm gonna interrupt Rosemary. I don't think the board's too concerned about the inside of the houses, the layouts and so forth is up to the seller. It's more of the look and feel of what the neighborhood would see, unless this is something you want to go through.
No, understood. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted the board to, Doug, just so you understand, I know you were not the architect at the last hearing, but in preparing the plans that were submitted with this revised application, you started from scratch, correct, Mr. Azrael?
Yes, this I had to make it work with the conditions that were presented to me, and it was I made no reference to the previous scheme.
Right, but you were aware of the previous plans, and these homes are actually smaller than what was previously proposed as well. Besides,
That much I'm aware of. Yes,
Yeah.
These are substantially smaller. Yes.
Thank you. That's what I wanted to get across. Thank you. So now switch us over to lot 10.02 and
Okay.
tell us about the style and the design of that house.
Okay, so I'll zoom in on 10.02. So to contrast with the 10.01.
Just for the record, we're still back at A4. This is the same exhibit we looked at before. Is that correct, Doug?
Yes, it is. It's the same exhibit.
Thank you. That's all. That's fine. Thank you.
Okay. So with 10.02, to differentiate itself from 10.01, whereas 10.01 had a gable roof, 10.2 is dominated by a hip roof and a different architectural style altogether, more reminiscent of a craftsman or arts and crafts style type of effects. And just to go over my notes here, yes, from starting with the hip roof, the window configuration is different with regard. We have a triple and a twin unit versus the individual units that you saw with 10.01. The roof at the porch is a shed roof compared to the gabled roof at 10.01. And the accents at the roofs here are asphalt shingle, whereas it was a metal roof with 10.01. The foundation is proposed to be a rustic natural finish cultured stone, as opposed to the brick that's more, man-made looking, so to speak. And the siding is fiber cement clapboard, but the accents, instead of board and batten as with 10.1, is split shake, as you see at the peak here. The color scheme is of more of a natural earth tone type of color scheme that we're proposing, with sage green for the siding and off-white for the trim. The doors are proposed to be more like natural wood tones as opposed to the painted finish of 10.01. So in every aspect, we're looking to differentiate these two houses completely and abide by the ordinance for homes being not similar looking to each other.
The lookalike. So it's your testimony, you're going to comply to the lookalike ordinance, and that the houses that are shown here is the way that it's going to look on the street. And if there's any changes, you would be working with Mr. Disco to work through that if anything was needed.
Certainly, yeah. If anything was to be changed, I would bring to the attention of Mr. Disco.
Okay, perfect. Anything further, Rosemary, from this witness?
I want him to clarify the height on this elevation is, Doug?
Yes, it's under 28 feet at 27.8 feet.
Okay, thank you. That is all, Mr. Chair.
Okay, let's go to Mr. Disco. Mr. Disco?
Just wanted to point out, because there was a great deal of testimony on the look of the homes. In my view, and Keenan should certainly weigh in as well, I believe they satisfy our ordinance in terms of not being look-alike structures.
Perfect. And you're comfortable with that if there's any changes, that you can be the arbitrator of those changes and work through that on behalf of. Perfect. Mr. Hughes?
Yeah, just to echo what Mr. Disco said, there's really two aspects of the architecture I think the board should focus on at this point. One is, do they comply with the look-alike requirements of the ordinance? I think clearly that's the case when you put these two elevations side by side. And then secondly, the reduction in height of the houses. I mean, that's the other key change from the initial application. So these homes are much more in keeping with the character of other homes on Clinton with this revised application. That's all.
Perfect. Okay, so I'm going to open up to the board now. Sil, since I forgot you last time, I'm going to go to you first.
No questions, thank you.
Perfect. Mr. Schwartz?
You just saying me?
Yes, Mr. Schwartz.
I'm satisfied, thank you.
Perfect. Mrs. Ruggiero?
I'm good, thank you.
Mr. Wishna?
No issues.
Thank you. Vice Chair Kessel?
No issues.
Who's next? Mr. David Barnett?
No questions, thank you.
Mr. Brian Brendell?
All good.
Aaron Loeffler?
No questions.
Okay, and then on my part, I think there's been a substantial improvement to show the look and feel of the houses and how they would work within the neighborhood, as far as my comment, and that the heights of the home now, with bringing them down, will more conform to what the neighborhood would be. So be echoing what Mr. Hughes had said. So with that, Ms. Stone, let's go to your planner as your final witness, please.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. At this time, I'd like to call Mr. Nicholas Warner.
Hello.
Mr.
Hello,
King,
Nick.
How you doing, Glenn? Haven't seen you in a long time.
No, it's nice to see you're still around. Raise your right hand, please. Do you swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth of proceedings before the board tonight to help you God?
I do.
What's your full name?
Nicholas Warner, W-U-N-N-E-R.
Nick, by whom are you employed?
I'm self-employed, Warner Engineering Associates.
And where are they located?
It's Succossona, New Jersey.
Okay, and what licenses do you hold, Nick?
I have a planner's license that I'll be testifying tonight, and I also have a engineer's license and a land surveyor's license.
And are all your licenses valid, Nick?
Like Fred, I'm good for 2 more years.
Perfect.
And wait, you've been doing this for more than a year or two, Nick?
41 years, actually.
I don't think you've ever appeared before, but you regularly appear before boards. You've represented boards all over the state, mostly in northwestern New Jersey, right, Nick?
Right, primarily Roxbury, Randolph, Chester Township, Chester Borough. I've been in Dover.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman?
I agree. I think he's qualified enough. If I don't see any board members, I'm looking through each one of into their eyes. No one's saying anything. Nope. Okay, so we're going to qualify him as an expert witness. And please go ahead. And please focus on the planning testimony on why these variances are justified.
Okay, so Mr. Warner taking Mr. Chairman's lead, why don't we jump right into it? Can you jump right into your planning testimony in support of the 4 variances sought here this evening?
Okay. As stated, this property is in the S60 zone, which requires 700 square feet and 60 foot of frontage. The property is to be subdivided into 2 lots, and they require 2 variances each for lot frontage and for lot area. The lots, property located on Clinton Avenue, which is a 50-foot right-of-way. To the west is the NC zone, and to the north is the OSGU zone. Along Clinton Avenue, there are 20 lots in the S60 zone on both sides of the street. There are 8 on the north side and 12 on the south side. This is a matter of a little bit of history. Springfield Township was established in 1794, incorporated in 1798. And over the years, development occurred throughout the township. And once sewers became available, small lots of 50 by 100 or greater were developed throughout the township. It appears that the houses on the north side of Clinton Avenue were built in the 1930s, except for Lot 8 in 1959 and Lot 6.02, which was built in 1989. On the south side, the houses were built primarily in the 1920s, and there are 3 lots that were built in 1948 and 1949. I took a look at the Springfield tax map. The majority of the lots in the S60 zone have 50-foot frontage and roughly 100-foot deep. However, there are areas where the lot frontage are smaller than 50 feet, and some of those are even less than 40 feet. For example, at the intersection of Kane Street and South Maple Avenue on the north side, there are 18 lots that are less than 40-foot frontage, and on the south side, there are 7 lots that are less than 40-foot frontage. I also looked at neighborhoods that were similar to Clinton Avenue, where you have lots on both sides of the street. For example, on Devon Street, there are 36 lots. 11 of those lots are less than 40 feet.
Yeah, I'm gonna interject. I want to focus on this neighborhood, not places the other neighborhood. Let's focus like what's across the street in the surrounding area, not Devon, not Maple. It's far enough away. Let's focus on this area and go over that.
Okay, all right.
Go ahead.
Okay, therefore, getting to looking at Clinton Avenue for the 20 lots that front on the street. For lot 10.01, which has a frontage of 56.1 feet, and lot 10.02, which has a frontage of 43.998 feet. On Clinton Avenue, lot 10.01, the frontage is greater than 95% of the lots on that side of the street. On the total 20 lots. On lot 10.02, the frontage is greater than 25% of the lots. The next area is the required area of 7,500 square feet. Lot 10.01 is stated as 6,272 square feet, and lot 10.02 is 6,050 square feet. At front on Clinton Avenue, 10.01 is greater than 80% of the lots in area, as is lot 10.02. It should be noted that lot 10.01 is adjacent to an existing dwelling on lot 9, and that was talked about the driveways. That the township's tax records for building footprints for the 20 lots. The footprint on lot 10.01 is 1,503 square feet, and on 10.02 is 1,488 square feet. Footprint of the houses on the north side of Clinton Avenue, there are 5 houses of the 8 that exceed that footprint of lot 10.01, which is 63% of the lots. On the south side, there are 5 of the 12 houses that exceed that area, and that's 42%. For 10.02 on the north side, there are 5 of the 8 houses also that exceed the footprint of the proposed lots, again, 63%. And on the south side, 7 of the 12 houses exceed the footprint of the proposed lot, which is 58%. In looking at the existing zoning, the property is 12,320.7 square feet, and developed on the current zone within the subdivision, the maximum building footprint would be, as stated, 3,080 square feet. For 2 stories, that would be 6,160 square feet. Impervious coverage allowed is 4,435.5 square feet. It's noted that of the 2 houses as proposed, the footprint for both houses would be 2,987.3 square feet, which is a little bit less than what's allowed by the lot by itself. The impervious coverage would be 4,374.5 square feet, where the existing impervious coverage is 5,679.8 square feet. By reducing the impervious coverage, you're reducing it by 1,305 square feet, which is 11% reduction. It also should be noted that if this was developed under current zoning, that the building height could be up to 35 feet. The proposed lots, in my opinion, would be smaller than the lots both in size, frontage, and the existing footprint of the houses. It meets the neighborhood scheme of Clinton Avenue. It also meets the development scheme, well, of Springfield Township in general. In my opinion, creation of these 2 lots would not have a major impact on the neighborhood, and that the 2 proposed lots in square footage coverage as well as impervious coverage would be less than what's allowed. If the lot was developed under the current code, it would the home occupation, as well as could be used as a daycare, which create, I know parking was an issue as well as pervious coverage.
Rosemary, anything further on the planning testimony?
Yeah, Nick, can you just tighten up a little bit on the positive and negative criteria under the C2 variance relief so the record is clear in support of the 4 variances that are being sought?
Okay. Under the positive criteria, the subdivision is conforming to the existing neighborhood. And looking at the Kaufman versus the Planning Board of Warren Township, that was part of the issue in that case. And the court and the board agreed to look at the neighborhood. For example, the lot areas, as I just stated, are larger than 80% of the lots on Clinton Avenue. The frontages is on 10.01 is 95% greater than the lots. The footprint is greater than the footprint is smaller than majority of the lots on Clinton Avenue. In addition, there'll be improvements to the lots. For example, the fence in the rear, reduced impervious coverage. There'll be less runoff, as was explained. Under the negative criteria, the existing zone does allow for a 3,080 square foot house with a height of 35 feet, which would, in my opinion, be greatly out of character with the neighborhood, existing houses on Clinton Avenue. It's my opinion the benefits to the community advance the purpose of the zoning, and the positive criteria outweighs the negative criteria.
Okay, thank you, Nick. Did you also have an opportunity to review Mr. Hughes's planning memo dated May 28th, 2020?
May 28th.
Yes, this is the last one at the subcommittee, Nick.
I know I did. I just don't have it in front of me at the moment.
And while you're doing that, there is public putting questions on the Q&A. You can do that. Just hold off. If you want the opportunity to speak at the end of the application, we're going to have everyone have the opportunity to speak. If at the end of the application you haven't spoken, any of the questions on the Q&A, I will read them for the board and ask the questions to the applicant. So with that, continue.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, I'll just step in and say, in response to my review letter, I believe the testimony has addressed each of the comments that I set forth in that review letter.
Can you just repeat that one more time? You cut out in the point.
I'm sorry. Just to respond, in regards to my review letter, I believe the planning testimony has addressed each of the comments in my review letter. So I don't know if there's need for additional testimony.
Perfect. Okay. So Rosemary, anything further?
No, that is fine, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Okay. I'm going to go back to Mr. Disco before we open it up to the board.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would just point out some of the history here. Clinton Avenue was incorporated, or I should say placed in the OSGU zone for its entire being up until 2013. That's the Open Space Government Unit zone. That zone, and I don't know why it was there, but I've learned two things since this updated application came in, and that this property was the location of the administrative offices and maintenance garage of the Board of Education. The school property to the rear or at the end of Clinton Avenue and to the, I guess that's the north or east, is also a government unit. So that probably explains why Clinton Avenue was placed in the OSGU. The planner gave some indication of the ages of the homes. So obviously nobody thought that the OSGU designation was troublesome until 2013. Interestingly, and we've had OSGU cases before, there are no defined bulk standards for the OSGU zone. It's basically conforming to the environment and the adjacent properties. So that was a very bland standard that had to be met previously. As indicated, there was a subdivision in 1989. So presumably there was testimony entered at the time that based upon the OSGU standards, they met that test at that time. In 2013, because of the fact that Clinton Avenue is, other than the two corner lots at Mountain Avenue, is predominantly residential, the governing body moved it into a residential zone. The S60 is the smallest residential zone that the township of Springfield has, meaning it has the smallest requirement for lot area and lot width. So that was the appropriate choice to do. If you're going to put Clinton Avenue in a residential zone, the S60 was the proper zone. What obviously that did, it made almost all of the properties non-conforming. As the testimony was discussed by the applicant planner and the percentages, I won't repeat them. I had on the original application given a color-coded thing for simplification that showed that most of the lots on Clinton Avenue do not conform to the S60 zone. That's just the background of it, and I would not have any other comments. I'll defer to Keenan.
Mike, that was actually very, very helpful. Keenan, I don't think you had anything further. You were good?
Yeah, I mean, all I'll say is that the issue before the board is really whether the variances that are being requested result in a better planning and zoning alternative for Clinton Avenue than the existing oversized lot. I mean, that's what it comes down to. Are these homes in keeping with the character of Clinton Avenue? Because that's a valid purpose for granting the variances under the positive criteria. And I think under the negative criteria, with the reduction in the size of the houses in terms of height, and some of the other adjustments that were made in light of comments from the board and from the public, I think the testimony was compelling that there's no substantial detriments to the public good arising from these variances. So that's all from my end.
Perfect. Okay. At this time, I'm going to open it up to the board for some questions. Mr. Andrew Schwartz.
I have no questions of this witness. Thank you.
Thank you. Perfect. Ms. Ruggiero.
Nope, I don't have any questions. Thanks.
Perfect. Ms. Scott Wishna.
No questions, thanks.
Ms. Sharon Kessel.
No questions.
Mr. David Barnett.
No, but Mike and Keenan, thank you. Your comments were very helpful.
I echo that. Mr. Brian Brendell,
No questions, but echo Mr. Barnett's thoughts.
Silviene Grzybo,
No questions.
Aaron Leffler.
No questions.
Okay, good. And I have no questions. So at this time, I'm going to take the opportunity to open this up to the public. I see that there are 4 questions on the Q&A. I'm going to open it up to the public. If you are one of the people that put a question and spoke, I'm going to ask you address your question from the Q&A. Okay? If not at the end, if you didn't speak, I will read the question and ask of the witness to answer the question. So anyone, members of the public that wish to speak on application 11-2019S, 15 Clinton Avenue, please speak. So Joe or Apu, whoever's first in queue, go ahead.
Yeah, the first one is Denise.
So Denise, I see that you have 2 questions in the queue that if you can address them. I see you live on 26 Clinton Avenue. Our attorney's going to kind of swear you in, if that's okay, Denise?
Yes.
That way, Denise, you can make any statements in conjunction with the questions. You can do them all at once, if that's all right, Mr. Chairman. I think that'll be easier, okay? So Denise, would you please raise your right hand, even though we probably can't see you? Do you swear to tell the whole, truth and nothing but the truth in the proceedings before the board tonight? So help you God?
Yes, I do.
What's your full name, Denise?
My name is Denise Schaefer. I was Denise Garam when I bought the property.
Denise, you're gonna have to turn either your speaker down or something. We're getting about 3 of you talking. Okay, so Denise, how do you spell your last name?
Schaefer, Schaefer, but on the record, you have me as Garan, which is Gouiran.
So who are you? You're Denise Schaefer, right?
I'm Denise Schaefer. Legally, I'm Denise Schaefer.
All right, we'll stay with that then.
Okay.
And where do you live, Denise?
I live at 26 Clinton Avenue.
26 Clinton Avenue. Okay, thank you very much.
All right, so Denise, in keeping with what the governing body and everyone has rolled out, we're giving every member of the public 3 minutes to speak. So please go right ahead and ask any questions of any of the witnesses or of the board.
Okay, so one of my questions is, why are we considering going against our own town ordinances? I have a document signed by the neighbors up and down. I'd like to be able to show it in some way. I thought maybe you could see it, but opposing this. So I'm speaking for myself here, but obviously others as well. I'd like to understand the meaning of a minor variance. I'm sure it's a legal term, but the minor variances do have an impact that's not quite minor. I would like to know why, I don't know if you can answer this, the developer would not develop one big, beautiful house instead of 2 smaller houses. I do appreciate the change on the parking. That's still going to be a problem though with cars on the street. So I'd like to know how many board members have sat on the corner for 5 minutes just to see the traffic that I keep referring to. We've got Wayne's Garage on one side, the orthodontist, children from the orthodontist, and we have obviously children from the high school. I know that the board can refuse to grant this variance. I'm hoping that you do refuse to grant the variance because he can obviously still build a 1-family home. I think the business about the fence in the backyard is just silly. The police commented that there's not a problem with the corner. I have an issue with that. I mean, I love our police department. They're wonderful, but I don't think any police officers live on the street. I also feel that there's a disadvantage that as community members we have where you're able to speak and see each other visually. No one can see me right now. I'm a voice at the other end of this computer screen. And I feel like there's been an unfair advantage by the witnesses, for the witnesses at our expense. We're residents on the street. We live here. We're not opposed to construction, but we are opposed to 2 houses going in a spot that's really a spot for 1 house. So this arbiter of change, I believe that was the architect, that he can make changes. I'm wondering if that just means he can make any changes. You could explain that. Like, what if he makes changes that aren't in keeping with what we've agreed to or potentially agreed to? And I just personally, as I'm sure you can all tell very clearly, I don't like this idea. We have ordinances in place. This is an old part of town. It's not the beautiful, fancy part of town. And I feel like I'm doing this little fight to hold on to this cute little street that I bought into 14, 15 years ago. that builder can put a one-family house, a big, beautiful one like at Madden Court or like Clara Court. Instead, 2 barrack-style homes are going to be squeezed in. I have a problem with that. 244, I'm done. Thank you.
Okay, so the one question I'll answer, and then my attorney's going to take it, is when we suggested an arbitrary of change is if there needed to be a minor deviation from the look or feel of the house without having to come back before the board. If the board acted favorably, the board typically relies on our board professionals to determine that. That was all that is. The applicant, if the board did act favorably, cannot make any changes without the approval of our professionals. And if they have an issue with it, they would kick it back to the board. Mr. Keynes, do you want to answer some of the, again, just questions about the beginning?
The only question I think that was really applicable to me, and Rosemary can certainly speak for herself, was the question about wanting to submit a list of people that had signed a petition. Unfortunately, Denise, under the law, that's not permitted. What's permitted is for you to testify just as you did, because we were able to swear you in. We can't accept a piece of paper and the like as part of the record. But the board can just take judicial notice of the fact that you indicated that there was a list. And I think that's as far as you can go. After that, Mr. Chairman, I'm not so sure any of those questions were applicable to me as your attorney.
Rosemary, on behalf of the applicant, do you have anything to address any of her concerns, or? Rosemary, Ms. Stone?
And Mr. Chairman, I believe there was a question about architectural, about changing it, so.
Yeah, well, I think what we addressed that if there was any changes, if the board acted favorably, if there was any changes like from the color blue to a shade of gray, Mr. Disco, as the board engineer, would be the arbitrator to make sure that it complies with the look and feel ordinance of the township. And if there was any concerns, you would kick it back to the planning board, as you would do in any other application that we have.
Mr. Tiger, I am not seeing Rosemary as a panelist. Looks like she may have left.
Okay, so, but I think that we answered all your questions. Denise, I know that we're within the time, but was there any question that was not answered?
Well, one question is, have any members of the board sat on the corner for just 5 minutes to see what I'm talking about with the traffic? It's like a slight incline on this and a slight turn, and it's just like this maneuvering between traffic. And it's the craziest street because no matter when I pull out of my street, and this is the truth, my driveway, there's always someone coming up and down the street, always. So there's always going to be someone at that corner. And it's like, I don't know, it's just very odd, but it is. And if you sat at the corner for 5 minutes, you would see that. So I'm just wondering were any board members ever just plant themselves in this corner, because this came up last time. I brought this point up last time.
So what I did was our business administrator did reach out to the traffic expert, Sergeant Ryan Westover, who had initially reviewed plans when it was there. And he, reading from his email, and Mr. Disco, I think it testified a little bit towards it. Upon review of the project, he didn't find any indications that there would be an adverse impacts to the traffic or safety on Clinton Avenue with the construction of 2 homes. Mr. Disco, anything to add to that?
Well, yeah, a couple things. I'm certainly familiar with the area. We had the orthodontist application that had great scrutiny when they came before the board a couple years ago. I'm familiar with the auto body place on the corner. I get my flat tires fixed there. Anecdotally to Ms. Schaefer, I was very good friends with her neighbor, the Balbonis. So I was often in that area, and I'm familiar with Clinton Avenue intimately. So I am familiar with the area.
Okay. Thank you. My other comment was about the disadvantage of being a faceless behind a screen. I'm just wondering if you can at least acknowledge that is definitely a disadvantage for residents who live here.
Glenn, do you want to describe the land use law from what it was? We're just following the guidelines.
Well, it's interesting because they're really, this is something that came up since the pandemic, and there's no specific requirement that we have to be able to see everybody's face. It's not something that we can actually deal with all the time. It certainly has been debated at the state level by the New Jersey Institute of Local Government Attorneys, by the New Jersey Department of Division of Legislative Services, I was actually on the phone with them before they came out with their guidelines. And it certainly is my legal position that this is in compliance with the guidelines that were issued by the Department of Community Affairs. We certainly have gone the extra mile, is the way I would put it, in making sure everybody had notice, everybody had a chance to review the plans, everybody had a chance to do everything. So it's acknowledged that, yeah, we can't see you, but quite frankly, courts are even now holding, not trials, but they certainly are holding discovery proceedings and other proceedings telephonically with no Zoom or anything else. So I think, unfortunately, it is what it is. And my hope is that we don't have to be doing this after July 1st or thereabouts. So that's the best acknowledgement I can give you, ma'am.
Thank you very much, Denise, and we appreciate your comments and concerns. Any other members of the public wish to speak on application 11-2019 S?
All right, we have someone named Ray Heff in the queue.
Yep. Ray, I see that you posed a question on the Zoom. If you can please incorporate that in your, I see you live on 23 Clinton Avenue. Mr. Keynes will kind of swear you in, but if you can please take in account your question.
Hang on one second. I think he's actually signed in under Denise's name under a different account.
Okay, give it a second.
Hey, Ray, if you can hear me, unmute yourself.
Ray does not have internet connection. He's my neighbor across the street. Ray's right here. Go ahead, Ray.
Hello, can I be heard?
Yes.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Yes, you can. Ray, raise your right hand,
I
please.
just want to make one correction. The name is Huff, H-U-F-F, the last name.
All right,
Okay.
we had it spelled wrong. Thanks, Ray. Ray, raise your right
Okay.
hand, please. Do you swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth? The proceedings before the board tonight, so help you God?
I do.
Okay, Ray, it's H-U-F-F, and you certainly are definitely Ray, even though you're identified as somebody else on the screen, right?
Well, yes, that's right.
Yes, okay. Ask the board or tell the board what you want to tell them, sir.
Well, I'm pretty much going to repeat what I said at the meeting last year. And one of the points I made was that there were other areas where the investor could have bought, where he would have been able to put 2 or even 3 houses. Why select a place where this zoning says only 1 house should be? As I pointed out last year, the exterior of the house, the owner's house, is in very good condition. It has a new roof, new siding, new windows, new doors. And I think some investors would just leave the outside alone, gut the inside, and the investor would still make a profit, I'm sure. At the last meeting, 8 members of the board voted to maintain the status of the zoning. And there was only one exception, and you know who you are. So I hope that you will maintain your vote, because not much has changed. And throwing things about a back fence, I think that just muddies the waters. The owner bought this property probably for investment purposes. We are not investors, we're residents. And as owners on this street, we have the investment concerns of our property. And when you have granting variance does nothing for the street residents. It seems to be, if it's changed, it benefits the investor, someone who doesn't live on the street and wants to make money. And there's nothing the matter with making money, but it shouldn't be at the expense of the residents of the street. And I hope the board will maintain the vote that it did in last year and deny this variance. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your time, sir.
Thank you.
Is there any other members of the public that wish to speak on this application?
Up next is Jill Vecchione.
Perfect. Jill, I see that you live at 35 Clinton Avenue. From your text, you have 3 questions on before the board. If you wouldn't mind just please addressing them so I can clear the queue. And our attorney, Glenn Keynes, will swear you in.
Okay.
Jill, would you please raise your right hand? Do you swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth, the proceedings before the board tonight, so help you God?
I do.
Jill, would you please spell your last name?
V like in Victor, E-C-C-H-I-O-N-E.
Okay, thank you very much. Go ahead.
Go ahead, ma'am.
I just want to address one thing that you threw out there about the 1989 variance, which I did say at the November meeting. That was my parents' property at the time. It's now my property. But the lot is my lot. The larger lot at 35 Clinton Avenue was a rectangle. They divided it in half to make 2 rectangular shaped lots. Now you're going to put an irregular shaped lot. You're going to divide that in half. It's just way too compact. One of the board members said that they had been on the street. Okay, fine. Vision it. It's just too compact an area to put these two houses on a lot that is designed for one. And to reiterate what Denise was saying, it's bad traffic up there at that spot. Okay, and now you're going to have parking for two houses instead of just one property. It just makes no sense at all. And you're saying to feel for the character of the neighborhood and the street. I've lived here most of my life. It's been this quiet little street. Now you want to build up two houses over there, create traffic at that corner. As it is right now, when I go to work, making a right-hand turn is impossible at 7:30 in the morning. So Denise is right. It's just way too busy, and you want to make it busier up there. So I wish you would just keep with your original decision back in November. That's it.
Thank you very much, Jill, for your time. Anything further?
No, I said my piece.
Thank you for your time. Any other members of the board? Any other members of the public that wish to speak on this application?
No comments, no hands. Nobody.
All right.
Nobody.
Seeing none, I'm going to close this application for the public portion and remand it back to the board for some dialogue. I'm just going to go around the horn just to see after everyone had an opportunity to see if we have any other clarifying comments. So first, Mr. Andrew Schwartz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was one of those no votes on the original application, and my concerns at that time, both based on my review of the application and hearing from the public, was that the original plans were to really squeeze two houses into basically a lot and a half. I am satisfied that the owner and his professionals have gone back and redesigned this consistent with the concerns that we in the public stated before, to better fit two houses onto the lot, whereas they won't be jammed in, and whereas they do keep with the character of the street. Now, on the parking and traffic issue that I know the public has spoken on several times, based on the report of our police department, and I did go and observe. I don't see how moving this particular lot from one to two homes is going to materially change what may already be a bad situation. The situation is bad. What's planned for this is not going to make it materially worse. So with that said, I thank the applicant for going back, and they clearly did listen to what we had to say, and this is a much better proportionment and use of the space.
Thank you, Mr. Schwartz. Number two, Ms. Ruggiero.
Thank you. I actually did not vote on the prior application. I was not in attendance, so this was my first time, reviewing this. So I'm comfortable that our professionals have done their due diligence and that they're comfortable with this. So I'm going to rely on that. So thank you.
Mr. Wishna? Scott? You're on mute, Scott.
Sorry. So I did vote no previously on the application last year. I think not to repeat anything that Andrew previously said, but I believe there was one other issue having to do with driveway placement that we had some pushback on as a board. And I think that the revised application that we've seen here tonight has addressed the placement of the driveway, their distance from each other, and then the distance from the adjacent home. So, I'm comfortable that that the revised application addressed the needs or addressed the concerns that we brought up previously.
Perfect. Ms. Kessel?
I agree with what the other three people have just said. I don't need to belabor it, but all of the concerns that were raised by the board were addressed to my satisfaction by the applicant. So I have no additional concerns regarding this development.
Mr. Barnett? Thank you, Sharon.
Sure, thanks. I only agree with what Sharon said, but then she agrees with everybody else. So, same thing. I do empathize with the residents. I understand how change can sometimes be hard when we're used to certain things. I was one of the board members that did vote no last year, and I've been on this subcommittee working with a way that we can get what can be the best property redevelopment here. To do the best with this application, and as board members like us, we obviously have to look at both sides. We have to look at what the zoning ordinances are, what the land use ordinances are. And take into consideration that even if the owner of that property is there for investment, that owner is still the owner of the property, and there is a process for going about a subdivision, and I think that we have done, and the applicant has done the best possible job at putting two houses there that are substantially in character of the neighborhood, meets many of the ordinances which we have. The height was one of my big issues last time, and what the applicant has done with the height to me is very acceptable, and really does, if two houses are going to be there, does put them in conformity with what I believe is a character of the neighborhood, with the height, with the size, with the setback, with the driveway, the dimensions of other houses on the block. I have spent time on that block. I've specifically driven down that block at certain times of the day, because I was on the subcommittee. This applicant was a little bit more. This application was a little bit more front and center for me. So overall, I don't have any further issues with the application as I had when it was first presented last year.
Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Barnett. Mr. Brendell?
Mr. Barnett is a tough act to follow. I did not vote on the application last year, but I am satisfied with what our professionals have recommended. So I'm all good. Thank you.
Aaron Loeffler?
Yeah, I was not on the board last year, so this is my first time hearing this argument and hearing, what the issues were. And as far as being familiar with the street, Jill Vecchio and I actually used to be good friends with your brother, Paul. So I do know the area, and I do know the house, and I do know the street. And I've heard what everybody has said tonight, and I will take into consideration all the issues that were brought up.
Perfect. Sil Dabrowski?
I did vote no for the first round when the applicant came to the board, and they came back and did a great job at changing all the modifications that we had recommended. My issue was the height as well, and the way the driveway was set up, and they, did a great job in changing those.
Perfect. Thank you, Ms. Grabowski. I have no further comments. I'm going to ask Mr. Keenan to just read what the variances that are required and let the applicant confirm that those are the correct, so that the board is aware of what's being considered again for them. Or Rosemary, if you want to read it, Ms. Stone, you want to read it and let Keenan agree?
I can certainly do that. So the 4 variances that are required for proposed lot 10.01, we need a variance for the square footage of the lot area. We're at 6,272 square feet, where 7,500 is required. And for 10.01, we are at a lot width of 56.11, where 60 feet is required. For proposed lot 10.02, we are at 6,050 square feet. And for lot width, we are at 43.89 feet.
That's
Okay.
accurate.
That's accurate. Okay. Seeing the board's consideration and so forth, Mr. Disco, you have nothing further?
Again, from an engineering standpoint, there is nothing that's troublesome on this. It's fair to point out that this application before the board in 2020, as opposed to the application that was in 29, is better from an engineering standpoint. I'm not making any determination as whether this is a good project or poor one, but it is a better one than what it was in 2019. The driveway locations were shifted away from established residential units. The driveway lengths were lengthened to such that the parking waiver or variance previously has vanished. The heights have decreased even though they were conforming in the past. As a board professional, I'm not an advocate or opponent of it, and I certainly don't, on any application, tell you that. Keenan and I, on troublesome applications, are going to be more involved and have more issues that we raise. So it's up to the board members to analyze the planning testimony here and determine whether it meets the tests.
Thank you. Keenan, anything further before we take this under consideration?
No, if I said anything, I think I would just be repeating what I said earlier after the planning testimony. So I think the board is aware of, their task here in terms of evaluating the positive and negative criteria, and I'll leave it at that.
Okay, perfect. Ms. Stone, there was if the board acted favorably, there's two conditions that I wanted to make sure that were considered. Number one, I wanted to make sure that the applicant gave notice to the Board of Ed. Hopefully school will start in September. We're all in Springfield are hoping that we notified them when construction would be taking place, so that way they're aware, so that way they can have input of anything with the school, testings going on and so forth. And the second issue for consideration in front of the board is we've done this before when there are applicants with variances that are putting houses on properties where, something to be inserted in the deed so the buyer is aware that basically anything they do, if anything else they would want to put, a pool, a generator, whatever it might be, that they're aware of something of this. And Glenn, you've developed some language in the past that has been given them to put something in the deed. Do you recall?
We'll put the language in. It goes in the resolution, and then Rosemary and I will figure out how to put it in the deed, Mr. Chairman.
Perfect. I think the board wouldn't have a problem deferring to you on that. So with that, I'm going to entertain a motion on this application.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion for the approval of application 11-2019S for Mario for, 15 Clinton Avenue, Block 802, Lot 10, minor subdivision, variance for 2 lots.
Perfect. And it's with variances that were read by Mrs. Stone and confirmed by Mr. Keenan, with the 3 conditions, I think, and we'll let Glenn add in anything else. One, that the fence will be, worked out with a plan with the Board of Ed and their engineer, and Mr. Disco will be the arbitrator to come up with what's the right thing. That there will be some language inserted in the deed to make the buyers aware of these homes. And the third issue is to notify the Board of Education when construction is going to be start. Anything that's your motion?
Yeah,
Can anyone, Mr. Keynes, anything that we're forgetting on condition before it's seconded?
I don't know whether Rosemary has county planning board approval yet for the subdivision. Do you? Well, it doesn't matter. That'll be a condition of the approval anyway.
All
She's
outside.
got it.
Yeah.
And Mr. Chairman, the first one you talked about was the replacing of the fence and the gate with board on board, subject, I guess, to final review and approval or something of either Keenan or Michael. I guess Michael, because he's in town more than Keenan.
Yep.
Then I have nothing more, sir.
All right. Can I have a second on that, please?
I'll second.
Is that Sharon that seconded?
I was one of the people. Yep.
All right. We'll go with Sharon. Ms. Law, can we please have a roll call?
Mr. Barnett?
Yes.
Vice Chair Kessel?
Yes.
Mr. Schwartz?
Yes.
Ms. Guzkowski?
Yes.
Mr. Lawfer?
Yeah, yes.
Mr. Brendell?
Yes.
Ms. Ruggiero,
Yes.
Mr. Wishna,
Yes.
and Chair Tiger.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Perfect.
What's the vote count? What's the vote count, Jen? Is that 9-0?
That was 9, yeah.
Okay, good.
Okay, so at this point, thank you, Ms. Stone, for presenting. I think the board, you took a lot of the feedback, and we try to take into account a lot of the public's concerns and a lot of the board's concerns and kind of put it together. Our next meeting is going to be July 15th at 5:30. So that's when the resolution would be taken up at that time.
Great. Thank you so much, Mr. Chair, members of the board. We appreciate your consideration.
Perfect. Thank you very much. At this point, since no further applications, I'd like to take this opportunity to open this meeting up to any members of the public that wish to have any other business before the planning board.
We have, looks like Denise, does she want to say something else or just making a comment in the question and answer section?
Denise can come if she has any members, anything before the board is fine.
Yes, I'm right here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I'm really frustrated by this, as you can tell, probably from my last comment. I feel like we have a town that has ordinances. Yes, the witnesses who had the benefit of a screen, and I know that you're going to tell me that you met the guidelines, but you could have denied them a screen, and they weren't denied one, that they made some tweaks to the plans. And although that was great, the end result is still 2 houses in a spot that is really designed for one nice house. And I'm really disappointed that members of this community, who you guys are, did not look out for what was in the best interest of the community. You looked out for what was in the best interest of the builder. One nice house there is far better than 2 houses that are squished in, no matter how you slice it. And I can prove I'm right, because if I was wrong, you wouldn't need the variances.
Okay. Thank you very much for your concerns. I know that, I think the board, just thank you so much for the comments. I know that the board.
So I think I really want to understand the process, because now I'm thinking maybe I need to get myself on the town planning board, because I'm wondering if I came to the town planning board with some sort of crazy variance, I'd probably be denied. So short of the fact that you had professionals make their presentation, the heights, the width, the degrees and all that, other than that, okay, what really is the deciding factor? Because they could have just come in from the very beginning with their presentation, that would have been it. But there was like this facade that the residents had a say in it. And I really find that, why do we have zoning laws? Why do we have ordinances in the first place if we're not going to respect what we have in this town? And on top of it, this is not, like I said, the big fancy part of town at the top of the hill. This is an area that needs a little TLC. And you had an opportunity in your hands to address that and to give a little TLC and help us out just a little bit. And instead we get 2 barrack-style houses squished in that meet all the requirements that you literally just made up.
Denise, I don't know how. I just would say thank you very much for the feedback and time. I know that in January that they look for board members to be on both the zoning, the planning board, the board of health, other boards. If it's something that you want to be on one of the boards, you should reach out to the governing body, the council members, and
perhaps. I mean, we'll see. We'll see. And the first thing to do is come in and follow the rules, which is, I think, what you guys were put in place to do. So thank you for your time. This was really, even though I kind of knew going into it, it came across to me as predetermined, and it had that feel. You can ask people at your office. You can ask my family members. You can ask Ray, who's sitting here with me yesterday. But I would have liked if the consideration for what the neighbors would have wanted would have been taken into account. It just seems like it was all of this show about what the lawyer says and what the architect says and what the engineer says, and I'm very impressed they can build a house. It's fantastic, but it still doesn't address the needs and the concerns of this little side street. 15 houses. I don't know. You've got the records in front of you. That builder should not be putting that house there. I know it. Ray knows it. My husband knows it, and you guys know it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Are there any other members of the public that wish to address anything before?
Actually, Mr. Chairman, can I respond to that, please?
Sure, Mr.
Because while I appreciate the participation of the public in this process, and they, of course, have the absolute right to and should continue to do so, I am offended when my personal ideals and values and ethics are called into question by one member of that public because I didn't vote the way they think I should. This is a volunteer board. We spend our time and do the best we can to make sure that the ordinances and rules of this town are followed. And
I
those rules,
apologize.
excuse me, I have the floor, ma'am. Those rules provide for variances. They are specific instructions, and the record will show that those instructions were satisfied here. The thought that because she does not like two houses and would prefer a McMansion, I'm sorry, I've observed that street, and a McMansion would be a disaster on that street and would completely change the character, in my opinion, which I'm entitled to as a elected member or an appointed member of this board.
Okay, I apologize if I came across as disrespectful. I didn't mean that. I told you I was angry. I can appreciate that you're volunteering your time, and I do thank you for that. I can say that I hope that I'm politely disagreeing with what you said, but again, I apologize. I don't mean to be rude. I do appreciate that you guys are doing this as a voluntary service. And it's not just that I didn't get what I wanted. It's not that I want a McMansion. I mean, I'm happy, renovate the house across the street. But again, I didn't mean to be rude. My apologies for that.
Thank you. Any other members of the public? Pooh?
We don't
No?
see, oop, did I mute myself?
Nope. Okay, seeing no other members of the public, I'm going to take this opportunity to close this hearing. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
I motion to adjourn.
And I'll second it because I can.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Perfect. We will have our next meeting on July 15th at 5:30 p.m. We don't know whether it'll be in person or on the Zoom. We'll get back to everyone in the next week or so. Thank you, everybody.